Oh, I won't back down. Oh, I can't back down. You could stand me up at the gates of hell, or maybe the Degrassi black hole. I know I have many weird opinions, but I know it's right to tell you why I can think of 10 things that I can't let go, and I won't back down. It's a storyline that defined Degrassi. Time stands still. What Rick Murray did in season 4 and all that and the aftermath. However, that's not the video I'm covering today. Yes, I'm going to be talking about the Rick Murray situation, but no, not with Time Stands Still. That comes in 3 weeks. The fact of the matter is that Rick, when he was brought to Degrassi by the writers, was made to be this villainous guy that we all hate and abuses women and just is a piece of shit overall. The fact of the matter is Rick Murray is really a bad person. And no matter what happens, he's still going to be defined by him taking a gun to the school for any means necessary. For how much Rick was delusional, stupid, naive, and vindictive, there's one good point about Rick Murray that he got right. Rick's way of thinking was really wrong on a lot of ends. However, there's one end that actually made sense. It's the whole Rick hating on Paige situation and all that. And this goes back to season 2. How, you ask? Well, I'll tell you all about it in this chapter. It's the age-old question is about the Rick Murray situation in Time Stands Still. Is in Time Stands Still Part 2, when he targets Emma and all that. He knew he was going to target Emma for spurning his advances. Unfortunately, that's not true. Yes, the last act Rick did was point the gun towards Emma before Sean managed to dislodge it and then shoot Rick in the stomach. That we know. But what if I told you that Emma was not the main target when Rick brought the gun to the school in that episode? Well, it all has to do with one queen bee, hun, by the name of Paige Michaelchuk, and how Rick distrusted Paige and made it his mission. Now, I did a Reddit post 4 weeks ago, and for context, it's being taped on September 23rd, 2023. And I wrote, for all his crap in season 4, Rick was right to distrust Paige, and it leads back to season 3. Now, of course, it kind of leads to season 2, but not the whole hatred of Paige to season 2. It's just basically Paige's things in season 2. But anyhow, I am not glorifying this guy for obvious reasons. All I'm saying is I don't blame him for his hatred of Paige. And I wrote, after all, in season 3, before he put Terri in a coma, he didn't like Paige because he thought that Paige was forcing Terri to be in Paige's shadow. We as the audience saw that when Paige forced Hazel and Terri to shoot sides over Ashley in season 2, and they both chose the low road and stayed away from Ashley. He figured that Paige and Hazel, to a point, didn't want Terri to be positive towards Rick or come close to him, thus his anger at Paige for Terri. Paige was only looking out for Terri, and that's all fine and good, but in Rick's warped mind, Paige was pushy towards Terri and not allowed Terri to make decisions for herself. Terri brushes it off by saying that it's just Paige being Paige, and Rick was not having it. Paige was right in calling Rick a psycho, and Rick's actions towards Terri were deplorable. But then season 4 happens. Rick has it in his mind that Paige is spreading false rumors about him and is setting Emma up to not give Rick sympathy or positivity. He wants to give Emma his bank account and is pissed that Alex ripped up the check. No, it doesn't buy forgiveness, but it gave him more reason to hate Paige as he figured that Paige was forcing Emma in her shadow, which we all know was false. Rick had a right to hate on Paige, but in the end, everything Paige presented about Rick was proven correct. What are your opinions? So anyway, people called. Wizard Kells said, I think it made sense for Terri not to trust Paige. If Paige had been a backstabbing wrench in season 1, Spinner would have been Terry's boyfriend and she would never have hooked up with Rick. But at the same time, Rick didn't know or care about anything about that. He just wanted to isolate Terri from her friend so he can control her better. Okay, so I'll talk about the comments. So yeah, it made sense. Because, wanted to isolate Terri from her friend so he could control her better. Rick was kind of physically manipulative and emotionally manipulative, even wanting Terri to slim down. Okay. Anyway. Snow Unicorn says, why did he return to Degrassi though? And Dooley Fatty said, this was the dumbest plotline in the whole show. I wouldn't really say that, but anyway. Not only did he come back after putting a girl in a coma that he was abusive to, but the fact he was let back in. I know they needed a catalyst for what happened later, but come on, man. Well, Danny Hikari said this, and a lot of people have positive advice, saying, quote, Rick was able to point out Paige's behavior to Terri because the devil recognizes his own. Maybe not to the same degree, but Paige was manipulative and controlling. Rick could see that. And with Terri being his girlfriend, he knew that Paige in the picture was a threat. No, he wasn't wrong about Paige, but it was more for his own selfish reason and wanting to be her sole abuser more than seeing Paige as a bad person to protect Terri from. Okay. Kind of weird. Okay, so now I've got to put my context on this. Now, first, the reason why I think I won't back down from this. Now, Rick, of course, is in everyone's negative mind for good reason. But I'm just saying that Rick was right about Paige and how pushy Paige was. And, it held Paige's character for the first few seasons of Degrassi, except for a few minor infractions. The fact of the matter is that Rick had a right to distrust Paige. Now, when I said in my intro, it all goes back to season 2, you'd be thinking, Rick wasn't in season 2. I didn't mean Rick for the whole season 2 thing. I meant in general for Paige. Now, in season 2, well, at least in season 1, Ashley at the end of season 1 took ecstasy and caused some issues and some rifts. Ashley was trying to make things right by being with Sean and being with Jimmy. She wanted to make things right. But Paige, in her own mind, decided to make Ashley the bad guy in the situation. And near the end of one of the episodes in season 2, she put Hazel and Terri in a bad spot, saying, you know what? If you hang out with me, you'll be popular, you'll be cool, you'll be in a good spot. But if you hang out with Ashley, you'll be an outcast and basically shat on. Not literally, of course. You know what I mean. Unfortunately, Hazel and Terri both decide to stay in the warmth of Paige's friendship, if you will. Warmth in quotation marks, of course. And Ashley's a downcast. She turns goth. She wants to be angry at people. I think Ashley kind of smirked a little bit when Paige got taken advantage of in season 2 because Paige, ruined Ashley. But that's not good for any reason. But the fact of the matter, guys, is that, Rick was a bad guy. Season 3, he comes in as Terry's secret admirer, and Terri may have found someone she loved. Unfortunately, Rick shows some jealousy, some manipulation, and all that. Of course, the jealousy comes from the fact that when there's a feeder thing and that Jimmy gets to write everything and Terry's the main actress and Rick just does the stage shit. Rick wants to sabotage Terri because he figures that Terri is going to want to go to Jimmy over him. Yeah, I mean, jealousy is natural in people. But the fact of the matter is that Rick kind of went overboard. Terri bombs her stuff and gets mad at Rick and all that. But Rick justifies it, saying, I had to do what I had to do. And then, of course, he tells Terri not to hang around Hazel and Paige anymore, saying that they're poisoning your mind and all that. Paige is just jealous of you. Terri doesn't get it. And then Rick accidentally shoves Terri into a wall in an alleyway, and they're broken up. Good. But then, a couple episodes later, in a trust episode, Rick and Terri decide, we need to get this over with. So they do the trust exercise. They find out they're truly in love with each other, and it seems good. Unfortunately, Paige has her reservations, and so does Jimmy and does Spinner, and a lot of people. Paige does this weekend road trip with Jimmy and Hazel being a pair thanks to Saturday detention. Spinner and Paige trying to be the ultimate power couple, and Terri by herself. Terri says, I don't have anyone to go with. And Paige says, yes, you will. You're best friends. So, of course, Terri's unsure about her stuff. And then she ends up being with Rick and all that in a trust exercise and all that, as I said. And then, they go on the road trip. Rick pisses Paige off. Paige sends Rick into the forest. Well, Terri goes after Rick and tells him that Paige is just Paige being Paige. And Rick's like, she doesn't care about you. She just wants to control you and all that. And so Rick does the thing and pushes Terri on the rock, which, she bleeds out and, she's in a coma. Rick has blood on his hands. He runs from Spinner and Paige, who luckily find Terri and find Rick, in a sense. So, of course, Spinner and Paige are both angry at each other and themselves for letting this happen with Terri. And especially after Terri's dad snaps at them, they feel guilty. Fortunately, though, Terri's dad does come around and say that, he felt bad for how he treated Paige and Spinner. So, the fact of the matter was that, Paige and Spinner were upset. Of course, Rick's out of school, and we're like, okay, well, that's fine. However, we soon learned that Paige and Rick, Rick's back at Degrassi with seemingly no strings attached in season 4. And, of course, the school's mad at Radish for doing that. Radish tries to justify it in a deleted scene, which should have been shown on camera, saying that, Terri's in a private school and he hasn't been criminally charged. Criminal charge happens, Radish would have booted him. Okay, we get it. But, the whole thing with Rick not having a criminal charge just doesn't pass the sniff test in any capacity. I don't care what you think. Regardless, things happen for a reason, and, Rick's back at Degrassi. They all want to get rid of him in some way. Rick feels great because no one can touch him at the school, but Emma and Paige in their Orange Ribbon campaign gets onto Rick's nerves. Rick gets bullied. He decides to give up his bank account to Emma, who thinks about taking the money for domestic violence thing, but Alex rips up the check and rips both Emma and Rick a new one. And the fact of the matter is that, Rick's upset with Paige, especially after knowing that Paige is spreading false rhetoric about him and all that. And then now Rick is thinking that Emma is falling under Paige's shadow, and that, Emma can't escape Paige's shadow, but Paige will not allow that to happen. So he tries his best to make Emma feel good about herself and get under Paige's shadow, which Emma does after realizing that they're beating up Rick just to beat up Rick. They don't care about Emma's domestic violence cause, and Emma stops it, but she loses her cause and practically everyone around her, as her friend group now goes to the Quiz Bowl team, which unfortunately includes Rick, who now has easy access to her, and Toby for that matter too. So that's a lot to bite off with the context. But let me tell you this, is that Rick was delusional. Yes. Should he come back to Degrassi? No. Should he have gone to another school? Yes. Should he come back to Degrassi at a later point? Maybe, maybe not. But the fact of the matter was that, Radish screwed up and all that. And yes, I will talk about Radish and the whole season 4 debacle in next week's video. And then the week later will be Emma and her clean girlfriend phase. And then I will talk about Time Stand Still in a live video. Don't miss out in 3 weeks. But the simple fact is that, Rick was right to distrust Paige. He saw in season 3 how Paige basically bullied people around, using her queen bee status to try to fight off Heather Sinclair. The weird thing is Heather was part of the Quiz Bowl team in season 4 and was replaced by Jimmy when she caught mono, and people think Craig was the culprit. It's possible, but what does Craig see in her? Anyhow, Rick just didn't like Paige. She knew that She knew that Rick was a bad guy and was trying to tell Terri all these things. And Terri listened to her in a sense. But Rick saw how Paige was controlling the Terri. And Hazel for that fact too. And I think that in his sick mind, he's like, Paige is got an inferiority complex. She's insecure and she needs Hazel and Terri around her to make herself feel good about herself. I don't think so. I mean, Paige has insecurities, but dude, Dean freaking raped her. And it took to season 4 for her to get her results. Unfortunately, the court case ends up Dean being off scot-free because of lack of evidence. Are you crazy? Could Sauvé have not done anything about it? I guess it's the all too common thing. And this was 2 decades ago. The fact is that, I know I'm babbling and all that, but the simple fact is Rick saw that Paige was being delusional, well, in his mind, and didn't want Terri to fall into the shadow because Paige feels like she's nothing without Terri and Hazel. And Rick tells these things to Terri, and Terri doesn't listen to him. And then, of course, Terri gets pushed against the wall the first time. And then when Rick sees how Terri, is listening to Paige and all that, he doesn't trust Paige and all that. Feeling that Paige needs Terri around her to make herself feel good about herself. That's not completely true, but it is what it is. And then season 4 pops up. He sees that Paige is spreading rhetoric around the school about his thing. Rick said it was an accident. He's like, I didn't get charged by the police, and now Raditch is protecting me. So what are you going to do about it, Paige? He's just basically waving a red cape in front of the charging bulls, as in Paige and her friend group, and even Emma. Emma kicks Rick out of the dot and gets in good with Paige's clique. And then the Orange Ribbon campaign comes in. Emma decides to do it for the domestic violence angle, but the students take the violence angle and basically want to bully Rick, saying that, this is all your fault, you're a stupid abuser, once an abuser, always an abuser, you're not welcome here. But Rick does not take the hint and stays at Degrassi, and then offers Emma the whole bank account of more than $500. I don't know the exact amount, but do we need to know? No, we don't need to know. So anyway, Terri doesn't come back season 4. She gets mentioned, but she doesn't really get mentioned that much. I wish Terri had an impact in the whole season 4 storyline, because maybe Paige would have stopped. But of course, Rick's angry that Paige did this Orange Ribbon campaign. I think in his mind, Paige started it, and Emma's just basically a follower. I mean, I understand where he comes from. He's saying that, Paige needs Emma in the system to make Paige feel good about herself and to alleviate her guilt over the whole Rick situation. That's in his line of thinking. Mind you, remember, this is all about him. This isn't about Paige or Emma. So he figures that Paige is just pushing Emma around, which is not completely true, although sometimes it feels like, Rick wants to get Emma in trouble with Paige and get Emma out of Paige's shadow, which he eventually does by being beaten up and Emma doing the right thing. Yes, Emma had some fault in the whole Orange Ribbon campaign, but the way she wanted to approach it and the way the students approached it were 2 different things. And Emma is not completely blameless, but, she should get less blame for that. I mean, yeah, Emma did some stupid things. But the fact is, it just is what it is. So what we got here is a failure to communicate. But the fact is that, Rick wanted to prove to people that he's changed, but he didn't. And that's just pure stupid. What I'm trying to get at is, for everything Rick did bad, he did one good thing. He realized Paige's potential of being pushy and all that. But Paige did it with the right intentions, and I think we all saw that. He just sees it for the wrong intentions and how he was El Stupido. So, I don't know what you think, all that, but yeah. Rick was right to distrust Paige and all that. I did a couple unpopular opinions on it, so why fight it? So anyway, thanks for watching this video, and next week I will talk about Raditch The week after, it's about Emma and her clingy girlfriend phase, and then Time Stands Still as a whole. Anyway, I'm Dread Diamond. I do.